Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We'll just be starting the webinar in 2 to 3 minutes from now. Please have some patience. We'll just be starting soon. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to organize a webinar on the topic from operations to strategic leadership, converting experience into career progression. Let us just briefly introduce who we are. We are MLA College. We are an award winning distance learning provider with deep roots in the global maritime and sustainability space. And we have strategic partnership with the University of Plymouth, who happens to be our awarding body as well for the gamut of degrees and programs that we do offer from our end. And specifically for our sustainability aspects, even of our maritime programs, we have a strategic partnerships with UNITA, that is the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. And what that means essentially is that if someone says studies components of sustainability, which is a ever evolving field, and which I'm sure Mr. Krishnan would shed more light on subsequently as well, they get a certificate of completion from the United Nations as well, since they are a strategic partner. Now, I'd love to introduce our guest today who's agreed to join us, Mr. Krishnan Subramanian. He's a distinguished leader whose career spans operational excellence, strategic governance, as well as leadership development across global maritime and logistics space. His journey includes operational roles as well as senior operational roles within Bharat Petroleum and Shell, leadership positions at Aurora Tanker, as well as now currently Transworld Group. Apart from that, he has also transitioned into influential strategic and governance roles, such as his current role of being the international chairman of the ICS and the chief learning officer at Transworld Academy of Excellence, apart from advisory roles at industry and professional bodies. So we're honored to have you on board, Mr. Krishnan. Before we start off, I'd just like to ask you, how are you doing today?
Thank you very much, Arjun. Doing very well. Thanks for this opportunity. Really glad to be here, sharing my experience and journey, and of course, which could be useful for many out there. Thank you.
We're glad to have you, Mr. Krishnan. We'd love for this session to be very engaging, in which we're able to also listen to the views of the audience, understand your perspective and what your aspirations are. So we'd love if you pose your questions in the question box, which is right at the very top. And apart from that, we will have two polls and a Q&A session right at the very end. So please interact exhaustively as we'd love to get the maximum utility from Mr. Krishnan's expertise and experience. So without further ado, I'd just like to ask the first question, which I covered during your introduction as well, sir. that you've transited from, say, operational roles at Bharat Petroleum, at Shell, to relatively more, say, leadership oriented governance and strategic roles that you occupy currently. So based on your own experience, why do you feel that so many experienced maritime professionals, logistics professionals, supply chain professionals, they reach a plateau despite having, say, operational excellence?
Great, thanks for that question, Arjun. It, it's a it's a real challenge out there, especially in the maritime and logistic field, which is heavy in operations, unlike some of the other industries. So therefore, if you look at my own trajectory, I started as an operations role with an oil terminal in India. And so the initial years for anybody is focused more on the functional aspects of the job. So you're more out in the field. You pick up, and for me, I entered this field without any formal education in logistics or shipping. And I did a graduate in science and then started off as a management trainee. Of course, we had the structured program which was given by the company, right from induction and then to training in various aspects, including operations and sales. So that is the focus for anybody young starting as a graduate in an industry. And more so, as I mentioned about logistics and shipping, it is heavily focused on operation. There's physical movement of goods to be managed, but along the line where we tend to, as human beings, we tend to get stuck is that in terms of being an expert in a particular field, yes, it's good to be an expert, and that's what helps you later on in life when you move into a planning as well as a managerial role. So that initial years of grounding in operations is extremely good. In fact, I really advocate that you should start in operations. In fact, some companies have mandated that the initial couple of years has to be in operation so that you get that grounding before moving into a corporate role or even a sales role. But where individuals tend to get stuck is that moving away from that operational role to come to a managerial level in terms of extracting ourselves and coming and having a macro point of view so that you get to know more about the interconnected businesses, interconnected functions, whether it is finance, legal, corporate strategy, and then become more broad-minded and then deep dive into any of those fields which interest you. So that is one main challenge. So how do we get out of it? I think it is two-pronged. One is that many companies, especially multinationals, big companies, have their own career progression paths. They send you for, they identify talent, they got their own assessment tools, your annual appraisals and goals, and then they put you into a learning pathway within the company, which includes external training as well. But today, what's happening is more and more companies are moving away from that traditional kind of a training role where the individual is also expected to take ownership of their career development. I'm not saying that companies don't do this anymore. There are many companies who still do that, but the extent to which was like the default option where companies hold your hand for your career progression has faded away, right? In not completely, but to a large extent. Therefore, today the individual themselves have to take that responsibility in terms of putting up a goal for themselves as to where they want to be. There's enough information available out in the world. In fact, there is over information with respect to what is available, what kind of career pathways, what companies, whichever country you want to be. The choice is immense. So therefore, it has to be a carefully curated goal list which individuals should have, and then work towards that.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Krishnan. And I think it's very insightful that you mentioned that based on your own experience, it is very crucial that individuals do start in operations so as to get a level of expertise within that before they wish to transit into, say, designations or positions requiring more of the softer or strategic skills as well, right? So that is extremely insightful. I believe at this junction, if we understand better about where our audience is placed, where they see themselves currently, that would be useful in framing our subsequent conversation. So I'm just launching a quick poll for the audience as follows. So everyone should be able to see the poll now, which is where do you currently see yourself in your career? Please take a minute, answer what feels the most relevant to you, and we'll pick up from there. And I do insist that everyone participate in this because the more you're engaged, the more relevant we can craft our conversation, to your current professional junction. I'll wind up the poll in 20 seconds. Please do vote. All right. Thank you, everyone, for voting. Mr. Krishnan, I think that you should be able to see the results of the poll as well right now.
Yes.
So what we can see from the poll is that a major chunk basically feel that they are strong operational performers looking for the next step, or they are already in leadership but they are seeking broader strategic exposure, which interestingly is very, very relevant to say the next question I was going to ask you. But before I do, would you like to comment on the audience demographics?
No, this is typical. So if you call it four phases, you got a major chunk in phase one, and then a little bit in phase two, and then again higher in phase three, which is what we call as the mid-career plateau, and then the phase four, which is quite typical.
Ah, So, linking to this itself, considering that it does seem that a major chunk is seeking either broader strategic exposure or are in operational roles and would like to understand how to transit. In your perspective, Mr. Krishnan, what differentiates operational excellence from strategic leadership at senior levels? Is it exposure? Is it skills? Or is it some other set of, implicit aspects which are required?
There's always a debate in terms of is leadership, are you born with leadership skills, or is it something which can be developed? I believe that it's a mix of both. There are certain traits, of course, which are intrinsic to your nature in terms of what you would be good at. And of course, thankfully, so there are a lot of tools available today, whether it's a psychometric analysis, the generic one, or even different kind of leadership analytics programs which are available, which really puts you through those tests at various levels. And there's various levels of complexity with different tools employed. Having said that, first one I would see is the person's intent, right? In terms of, yes, I really want to be. That's where I started with goal setting. I would really encourage everybody. I started this about 20 years back through learned it from a mentor of mine. So just remind me, Arjun, when we talk about mentorship. So I started writing down goals, where there's an annual goal sheet which I make with respect to the professional side as well as the personal side. So even most of us may do a financial planning for ourselves or goal setting, and we follow that strictly. But when it comes to career and professional life, we do not look at it with the same amount of seriousness. So one is writing down the goals, but the second part, which is where many of the failures happen, is in terms of reviewing it periodically, and then correcting it where required. Because this is no longer static. Our goals keep changing. The external world is changing so fast that we have to keep adjusting our goals and adjusting the way to achieve those goals constantly. The second aspect I would say is that operations is more focused on functional expertise. But when it comes to leadership, you're talking about broader macro level, starting from soft skills and then knowing more about the world and the interconnected aspects which governs the business. Right? So it's more about decision making, about choice, about trade-offs, about managing people, about managing situations. Yes, the foundation in operations is extremely useful, but then we have to move away from that in terms of achieving that. Formal programs definitely help, leadership programs definitely help, and that is where, as part of our goal setting, continuous learning in whatever way possible, there are so many programs available out there, whether reading a book, listening to a podcast, or going to a seminar and just meeting people and listening to them. This is all part of, I would say, the means to achieve to that goal. Today, it's no longer a straight line mentioning that, yeah, you have done an MBA and you're done with it, right? As an example, let me tell you that, when I was looking at these roles and where I want to be, one of the programs, because of my leadership role at the ICS and it transferred, I decided that I should do the certification of independent directors. And I completed that program 2 years back, right? So it has to be a continuous process where we refine our goals, we redefine the way we want to be, where we want to be, and then look at the correct means to achieve that.
Thanks a lot for sharing that, Mr. Krishnan. What I could take away from this is that first, having a very clear intent, the motivation, right? That where one wants to grow, being open to continuous upskilling and learning across multi channels, right? The webinars, the podcasts, including, say, for example, the one we're organizing right now. And finally, also say understanding broader, like strategic overviews, right, of organizations, industries, rather than being in silos to one's roles, might be some helpful factors in bridging those gaps, right? An associate question that does arise, considering that you have had significant experience mentoring senior professionals at both your, roles in ICS as well as Transworld Academy. How does one even start off in recognizing these capability gaps within the professional resume?
Well, specifically on mentorship, let me say that I do have mentors still. Everybody requires a mentor. At each and every stage of their career, they do require mentors. Now, how do you find them? Yes, there are now structured programs available. There are many organizations too. When the ICS is in the process of launching a formal mentor-mentee program. But more than that, I say it evolves based on, again, your own inquisitiveness in terms of learning more. I'm sure that there are people out there who are ready to help if you are there with the right intent to learn. So finding a mentor and then being consistent there. So there's a lot of difference between mentorship, coaching, and training. Many of us sometimes confuse coaching with mentorship. Coaching is something which is, by definition, it is for a specific goal, a specific skill you want to achieve. Say coaching for leadership, right? Or you want to coach yourself to learn swimming. There you call a swimming coach. You don't call them a swimming mentor, right? So whereas mentorship is a bit of long term, it is more personal. It is one to one, where you have a confidant, where you can express your fears, your doubts, and the other person is there to hold your hand and take you step by step. It's like having a sounding board. So unfortunately, in today's world of AI, there's a lot of reports out there where people use AI as a mentor, right? I would say that yes, it could be just a stopgap arrangement. However, it does not give the same effect or the kind of result where you have a live mentor for yourself.
That's a wonderful way to say differentiate between mentorship, coaching, and training specifically, right? With mentorship having more of the human aspect and consistent and continuous growth as well, rather than just task oriented towards one aspect, right? So that's very interesting that you share that. But say, suppose in their professional journey, someone has worked under under the tutelage of a mentor to identify what gaps they do need to bridge, right? What is it that would make a professional objectively understand that now they are ready to take the next step? They are ready to leave, say, just operational silos and take wider strategic responsibilities as well.
So again, the mentor is not somebody who's going to give you all the solutions, right? The mentor is there to help you out. So that's why I said it has to start from self-help, from your own goal setting. And then the mentor is there to guide you, to listen to you, and then guide you, and then wherever possible, give you or point you towards the right kind of resources, including the right kind of tools which are available out there. And then it is up to us again, put that effort. And this is where I would emphasize one more aspect about investment. Now, if you quickly maybe do this poll later on in terms of finding out how many of us here invest in our personal development. Can we clearly say I invest $500 per year or $1,000 or $2,000 per year for my professional development? It doesn't happen. I mean, even with me, it has not happened in my early years. But I do that consistently in the last so many years. Again, learning from my mentor. We invest in health. We invest in wealth. But when it comes to professional development, we we subconsciously think that this is somebody else's responsibility, whether it is an employer or my line manager, etc. So therefore, investing in that is extremely important. The mentor can guide you. And there is no harm in having more than one mentor. At some point of time, I had more than one mentor. In different aspects, right? So there's no harm in having that, and you will find that level of comfort and in terms of getting on with it. When you see the result, you know that yes, you are in the right path.
That's wonderful, Mr. Krishnan. I think when you put it quantitatively, right, that is just say X amount you invest in your professional development. Perhaps at least to myself, I can say, as a professional in a slightly different domain, it's a concept that I definitely haven't given thought to. That am I putting down an X amount specifically towards my professional development? And I think as you mentioned that perhaps in your earlier phase, that's not something you might have been conscientious of either. I think I highly relate to that. So I think it's a very wonderful way to put that across that is one say putting their finances on the investment where the mouth is, right, in terms of their professional aspiration. So thank you for sharing that. One thing I think I would like to ask you connected to this, right, because when we were discussing earlier, I saw that you have had previous academic experience as well, such as being faculty at SP Jain, at IMT Dubai, and also being head of professional development at ICS Middle East. So based on these experiences, what role do you feel structured reflection specifically plays? For individuals who wish to move into these strategic roles.
Well, again, I would say this is a little bit of own aptitude or your inclination comes in, and I've always been inclined to sort of um, say share what I know, right, or what I think I know. I should say that way. I have been part of the internal training departments wherever I have been in companies, and that made me thinking that this is something which I should continue to pursue and even develop upon. And that's when I discussed that with my mentor, and he told me the one sentence which I shared with everybody. So we all struggle to learn, right? In terms of, okay, should I read a book? We don't complete courses. I've had courses which were incomplete even after paying for it, right? We struggle with that. Those though we have an intention to learn. So he said that the best way to learn is to start teaching. right? I mean, let me give you my own this experience. So yesterday I did a full day workshop in chartering for 8 hours. That's a topic which I have been doing. I did the same topic a week back in Cape Town as part of a conference. But each and every time I have to deliver that, it's the same topic on chartering about the oil and gas industry. There is so many hours of preparation which I still need to do because I need to customize it based on who the audience is going to be, who are the participants. I go to the micro level of what is their designation, what is their experience, and what are their expectations, and I have to customize it. The topic may be the same, which means I have to do further research about what is happening. Even yesterday, before the workshop, I had to look at the news to know what exactly is happening in the oil market, in the chartering market, so that I can bring that relevance back to the classroom, which means that I learned 5x of what I intend to teach at that point of time. So this is something which I encourage everybody. It need not be a formal teaching. Yes, because of that, I got into formal teaching as an adjunct faculty in colleges. I'm now an academic advisor in a couple of colleges in India, and but you can start small in terms of a small group that can automatically lead into. And let me tell you one more. The byproduct of that is that your communication improves. For leadership roles, for strategic roles, it's extremely important that your communication has to be top notch. And I looked at this as a way of improving my communication.
That's a brilliant insight, Mr. Krishnan, because it might appear almost counterintuitive to think that the art of teaching or the profession of teaching might benefit the teacher even more than the students, right? In terms of the sort of takeaways that they're getting in both the professional and personal spaces, right? So, just building onto this, I will revert back to my original question then. That why do you feel structured reflection in specific is helpful for professionals, who then would want broader strategic roles?
Whether it is in the professional development of or any other, I'm sure there are a lot of those who are sorry participating today who are all working professionals. Many of them are leaders in their own. So in your own workplace, I'm sure that all of you um, would have realized that if you do not measure something, you cannot improve. Without a data point, you cannot improve. Improvement always needs that base level in terms of telling improve against what and towards what. So in process improvement, we say you do an assess process, you do a process mapping based on what is the current situation. Then you say you have a to be process as to where you want the company to be or that particular department or function to be or that process to be so that you achieve your goals. Then you do a gap analysis. Then you find out how do I bridge that gap, right? There are multiple stages for improvement. So this is where analysis and thankfully today there are so many tools available again which are very specific. I can share that with whoever wants to know more. You want to know more about skill gaps in supply chain, you can do that. Skill gap in logistics specific, you can do that. Or in commercial shipping, there are tools available which will take you. It is just like going for your health checkup, right? So they put you through either a blood test or a treadmill test, etc., based on which action or which activity has to be tested. So the same thing applies in skill gap analysis, where you put through certain a series of tests which will help you to give a report which will say this is where you stand. Are these 100% cast in stone? Not really, because it depends upon, it's again based on the input which you're giving at that point of time. If you take the test some point later, it may give a slightly different result, which is okay, right? But without that test and an understanding, I would say awareness of where we are, the as is situation, we wouldn't be able to decide what is the gap and therefore what action I need to take.
That's a very interesting point, Mr. Krishnan, that if there is, say, a more quantitative approach towards analyzing oneself, right, and where they are in their professional journey, which is ideally objective, third party, and data driven rather than subjective and based on one's own perspectives, that might be a better way because it is data informed and therefore more likely to be accurate, right? In ensuring that the next steps are aligned with the person's vision, perspectives, and where they currently are in their journey. So that's a brilliant insight that you shared. And I'm not sure you're able to access all the audience questions, but as a host, I am. So one question I did find relevant here was that someone asked me that is there a specific junction, or rather was there a specific experience for you which made you believe that you were ready for other strategic or governance roles in your own case?
Well, life teaches you a lot. I know that's the best teacher, provided we are ready to listen, we are ready to observe and listen. So, um, my career took me from India to Dubai almost exactly 30 years back in '96, and of course, I was eager to step out, learn more, and therefore I had seniors in Bharat Petroleum who were already working with Shell Petroleum in Dubai, and they said that's a potential opportunity. I was in a very comfortable role, already progressed to being a deputy manager in 6 years' time in Bharat Petroleum. It's considered almost a job for life, in the public sector. But I said no, I want to explore more, and took that plunge of moving to Dubai. I started with a logistics role, but then immediately the exposure, that this is where I really encourage you should move out of your comfort zone at any for growth. You have to move out of your comfort zone. You have to disrupt yourself, right? Because the human tendency is that inertia sets in. You're comfortable in that particular aspect that then an external force literally bangs you and says that this is not where you're supposed to be, and by the time it is too late. So I moved to Dubai, and because of the exposure I got in Shell, again, traveling to other places, meeting people, I said, I have to do something to start upgrading myself. So the options which I looked at specifically was either I do an MBA or an ICS, because ICS fortunately had started in the Middle East branch started in 1995, and I moved here in '96, so came to know about the ICS. And my colleagues in Shell London who said, yes, this is a good program because it's a UK-based institute, and therefore I looked at my goal in terms of where I want to be. By the time I had moved into ship chartering, and therefore I said, yes, if I have want to specialize in chartering, I would rather go for the ICS rather than do an MBA, right? So this is where I said your goal setting is extremely important. No program is good or bad. It depends upon where you want to be. So therefore, I pursued the ICS. And as I mentioned about teaching, I started teaching at the ICS as when I was even studying for the ICS exam. The 6 papers which I wrote in a gap of 2 years. So that is where it broadened my exposure, because ICS primarily I came from the tanker background, but at the ICS I got exposure to containers, to dry bulk, you name it. Now to project cargo, offshore industry, because the subject matter of ICS is very vast. But along the line, I started taking initiative to head the education division of ICS in the Middle East, then progressed to become the vice chairman and then the chairman of the branch, and which helped me move into global roles. Where I was there in the controlling council as a member from the Middle East branch, and then 2 years back I was elected as the global vice chair, and where I progressed into being the international chair just 2 months back.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Krishnan. That's quite a journey you've had, on hearing that, because say starting off in one specific professional direction, right, requiring a certain level of technical expertise, to deciding to eventually transit because of your increased exposure and, as I'm understanding, undertaking of educational programs at a higher level as well, right, which broadened your scope, which broadened your horizon. It's very interesting because you've also mentioned, say, that you've done a certified corporate director credential, right, in the recent past. You also did the management development program. at IIM Ahmedabad, and you have fellowship, of course, of ICS, right? Understanding that what key roles these educational certifications or programs have played in your own life, what role do you think these formal educational qualifications add to next steps, as compared to, say, just having experience?
So I would again put it in two buckets. One is qualification, and the other is certification. Right. So there's a vast difference. To get an entry, have an entry level job, most of the companies would say a minimum qualification. You need to be an undergrad. You need to be this postgrad. There's a minimum qualification which is set as an entry point. Of course, that comes with knowledge of that particular subject, and then you start off. But once you start off the job, what matters is more of professional knowledge, right? So if you want to move more into general management, yes, you should have an MBA. It has again the pedigree becomes very important. So that's where the rating of the college, from which institution you are doing, and what kind of specialization you are doing becomes important. Again, I go back to your goal, in terms of where you want to be. But professional certifications like the ICS or CILT or APIC, all these are for people who are already on the job, because it requires an element of professional experience and understanding to even pass these exams, right? And then it doesn't stop. So let me again give the ICS example. So I decided to do the ICS exam, but I would say my real journey and the learning started after I passed the exam. Yes, preparation for the exam gave me a certain amount of knowledge. There are books available. There were teaching resources available. Classes done by the tutors here, and then of course you pass the exam and get a certificate. But then the real benefit of being in such an organization, which is also a membership organization, is that you are part of a very active network, not only at a local level but at global level. So the ICS has got 3,000 plus members globally. Today, the first point of contact for me for anything in any part of the world, because we have 27 branches worldwide. And so through the member database, the first thing I get is to approach a member in any other part of the country, which helps me in my business. And when I transitioned from a chartering desk, say from Shell, I left Shell in 2010 after my posting in Singapore, and then I could get into a ship owners managing commercial in a chemical tanker owning and operating company. It was purely because one is the ICS credentials which I had, but secondly and most importantly, I was very active in the network, whether it is the shipping circle, with the brokers, with other owners, etc. So that is the investment part. Investment is not only about money to enroll for a course. Investment of time is extremely important, and in a consistent manner.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Krishnan. And I think the associated point, right, of not, say, just getting professional certifications, qualifications, and knowledge, but also becoming a part of a global community, which one can reach out to be and be involved in, is, I'm sure, a deeply fulfilling aspect of being involved with such global bodies for any professional, right? That it's not just an individual trying to upskill themselves, but it's a community having a sense of shared goals, right? So I think it's a fascinating share that you've done. I would like to move on to a parallel for MLA College as well. Like, for example, for MLA College, our general demography tends to be people who are in their mid careers, especially, say, sailors who are trying to transit onshore. And ideally, they'd like to have a master's level qualification, right? A level 7 qualification to show their suitability for more, say, strategic roles, for more leadership roles, which are not directly connected to the expertise they acquired while sailing, while they were acquiring their different certificates of competencies, for example. What would you say about these degree programs or the relevance of them for broadening one's professional horizons?
Well, specifically talking about those who are at sea planning to transition ashore, I would say that there is a whole lot of planning which is required, right? In fact, today morning I was addressing a group of professionals who are exactly in that kind of a position, about 10 of them who are undergoing a short program. So I was doing one particular session for them on certain aspect of commercial shipping. I would say the planning has to start in advance. As to when are you going to decide, or when do you intend to step ashore, right? The challenge, I mentor a lot of them today, and I would say the biggest decision is to decide that point as to when am I going to step ashore, hang my boots and then step ashore. Why is this important? Because again, I'm talking from my experiences that most of them start looking for a job after deciding to quit sailing, telling that okay, I have time with me, and most of them have the financial discipline to say that yes, I am financially secure. Because let me tell you, please always bear in mind that you have to be financially secure to have that freedom, and therefore to go after what you really aspire to, right? So that's extremely important. And then having that plan, because yes, as a master or a chief engineer, or to any level of sailing which you have done, because some of you may decide to quit after being a second mate, that's purely a personal choice. There's nothing good or bad about it. But deciding when to come ashore, that planning has to start in advance, because the kind of competence required for a shore job is different from what the competence required on board, right? Yes, I always salute the seafarers, because they're the one who help in terms of moving the global trade. Ultimately, where the goods have to move, the ships have to move. But having the right kind of guidance on what kind of roles they are targeting. So today, when I was in this particular session, the first question I asked them is that how many of you have been sailing? What kind of ships have been sailing? Some of them are on tankers, some of them on container ships. And then my second question was that when you're stepping ashore, what kind of role? So which industry are you targeting? Are you targeting, say, if you've been sailing more on dry cargo ships, are you targeting jobs related to dry cargo? And the answer was a yes. I said, then yeah. So that's the next step. And you said, okay, what are you targeting? You want to be in a commercial role? Are you talking purely chartering?
Hi, Mr. Krishnan, am I audible? Hi, am I audible? Everyone, just give us 1 minute. I'll
Hi
try to
Arjun,
ensure.
yes, you are audible. Yes.
Thanks for confirming that, Rita. I'll just try to ensure that our host is able to rejoin again. Give me a minute. Hi, everyone. Just give us 2 to 3 minutes. Mr. Krishnan is rejoining. There was a minor technical glitch. Thank you for staying on.
Sorry about that. This happens in technology. Are you able to hear me, see me, Arjun?
I perfectly, Mr. Krishnan. No worries at all. That was hardly any lag. I think you were concluding an answer at that time when you'd gotten stuck. Then
Right. About the roles ashore.
yes,
So
yes.
I would say that when you come to the next step of say, oh, yes, I want to be in chartering, then you have to look at, okay, do I want to be chartering in a ship owner's or operator's office, or is it going to be in a trader's or a manufacturer or a producer's office handling cargo, or in a broker's house? Because each of these, again, you can call it as chartering, but again, the skills required are different. The understanding required is different. Does your sailing experience help? I would say yes, right? Because you're already exposed to the maritime world, but in a different way in terms of how things are managed on board the ship. But the exposure which you have, how do you channelize that experience in terms of moving into a commercial role? I would like to know again, give a specific experience. 2 years back, I was mentoring a chief engineer who wanted to step ashore, and he was really particular that he wants to start off in commercial, right? Now, many companies look at it, oh, as a chief engineer, are you capable of starting off as a broker or in chartering immediately? I would say there is nothing stopping from you doing that, and this person proved that. Because one thing he did is that before he decided to step ashore, he completed his ICS exam. And I'm not telling that passing the ICS exam is a guarantee, right? It's just like any other qualification or a certification which you achieve. What you do after that is more important. And the second most important thing is that he started attending events whenever he is ashore for 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. He started attending conferences, investing money and time, and then meeting people. And that is what helped him to land a job in a shipbroker's house as his first job, after stepping ashore, after being a chief engineer. So this is what I'm talking about. Your goal, your intent, your ability, and your intent to invest is extremely important, and preparation, of course.
That is extremely insightful, Mr. Krishnan, and thank you so much for sharing that, incredible example. I'm sure that would be very relatable to a lot of audience member who might specifically be looking to, transit onshore. And I think your key emphasis on both proper financial planning to ensure that there is the material means to ensure that transition can be met, and at the same time pre-planning well in advance rather than transiting onshore and then deciding what sort of employment might be more suited would be a lot more pragmatic. A way to go about accomplishing this transition, right? So, thank you so much for sharing that. I think I'd just like to step towards the other side of the table where you've been for a while, which is the eyes of boards, senior leadership, and institutions, right? I'm sure the audience would love to know what builds strategic capability of a professional in the eyes of these decision makers, that this person might be ready for wider roles, for wider responsibilities.
The first thing I would say again here is your ability to meet stretched goals, right? There's no substitute to hard work, and there's an extra amount of effort required to get where you are. Even when you're doing exercise, or you have a personal or a fitness coach, you know you you are being stretched in terms of telling that you can achieve certain things. Now you can do 10 push-ups. Can you stretch to 11? Can you stretch to 12? That's the way you're pushing the limits of your muscles of your body. The same thing applies in professional life as well. As I mentioned, we can tend to get into a comfort zone very fast, which can lead to a downward spiral. So the only way to do is that, again, continuous learning. It's no longer optional. That is one of the ways. And the second is in terms of putting stretched goals for ourselves, right? Taking on a bit of a higher responsibility than what is there in our job description. So that gives two advantages. One is you're proving to others that you are capable, that in terms of doing certain things, because the moment you stretch by 5%, 10%, etc., we are flexing our muscles in terms of doing a bit more than what our current job demands. The second is we show the intention to your to your leaders, to your seniors, that you are getting ready yourself to take on leadership responsibilities. And leadership can start in any role. It doesn't require a title. It doesn't require a job description to say you are a leader, you can demonstrate wherever you are on a daily basis. So that is extremely important. So we always say that we should do what we are supposed to do, but we should also ensure that we tell others and show to others that we are doing more than what we are supposed to do.
That's a wonderful insight, Mr. Krishnan. I think it's of course very important, I would assume, from decision makers' end, right, to see someone going above and beyond, pushing themselves professionally, going beyond what would their comfort zone or explicit job description might be as well, right? That am I willing to take on additional responsibilities, more catering to where I'd like to be than where I am at the moment, right? And therefore, perhaps stretching themselves in that regard. So thank you so much for sharing that. I am aware that we're now a little short of time. So there is one more domain I'd like to bring in, before we do close, which is your experience on leading digital strategy, systems architecture, AI initiatives. I know they are buzzwords, but at the same time, they are an exponentially evolving trend as well, right? Which most corporates and institutions are having to adhere to. What do you feel that strategic understanding of technology plays as a role to shape these senior leaders?
Technology is here to stay, and the simple demonstration I can give you today is that I'm currently attending two courses on AI, right? It's no longer an option. The only way you can scale, whether it's your learning, your business, etc., is through technology. And the next 5 years or even the next decade is going to be an exponential growth in terms of technology at all levels. And AI is just one part of it. AI has always been there. The way AI has been much more prominent is what we are seeing today, and then where it has become a buzzword, right? So I would say that technology is something we should embrace. Again, I come back to the point of human comfort and inertia, where change, nobody likes change. Human beings don't like change, right? So anything new which you want to learn, or even implementing something new. I've been again part of implementation of ERP systems right from the time when I was with Shell. I was part of two SAP implementation, which gave me a good insight on how these things have to work. If they have to give the result and the return on investment. So at a board level as well, as much as, so one more aspect I would say is the security part of it. As much as we are embracing technology, one of the major things we are worried as leaders today is about the threat, of cybersecurity. So there is, as much as we embrace that, what we need to be aware is that, are we using the right systems even within AI? Do we have the right AI policies in terms of what you can put in there, what you cannot put in there? Where, what kind of an LLM is that particular platform using? Where is your data being used? Is it within your private domain or within the company's domain, or is it going out into the world? So we have to be extremely be mindful. As much as we continue to use technology, use new platforms, etc., we have to be extremely be mindful, because at a leadership level, what matters is in terms of the, of course, profit. That's why a company exists, but even in terms of reputation.
Thank you for sharing, the crucial requisite of keeping abreast, right, of technical changes. And I think it's quite fascinating for us to hear that you are invested in two AI courses at the moment as well, while I'm sure being extremely occupied and busy professionally, right? Because even when we try to reach out to you personally, you're always involved in something, or you're traveling, or you're busy. So I think it's very inspiring to know that you're still able to take up learning opportunities and courses. And I'm sure it should set the stage for attendees as well, that at every junction of the professional journey they can stay abreast of new developments and upskill themselves. Looking back at our conversation today, right, I started off by asking you about what is it that differentiates operational excellence from strategic leadership, right? How does one recognize gaps within themselves? What gaps do they need to bridge to ensure that they're ready to make the next step? Is there a phase at which they can actually say that I'm ready for wider responsibilities? How does that become clear in the eyes of senior stakeholders, senior management as well, that this person is ready to take stretched goals, say, to take the next steps, right? And finally, also now understanding how a strategic overview of technical implementation in different work functions can be a very crucial step forward. Uh, would you like to share any one final message? Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wind up from our end?
I would say that continuous learning is no longer optional, right? So either we'll be pushed into it. So it's better that we do it in a proactive manner. Um, the world is moving at such a fast pace, changes which are out there is outpacing us in terms of how much we can cope with it. So therefore, even though it may sound overwhelming at times, even a small step, if we can continue in terms of telling, okay, this week I have learned something new, or this month I have learned something new, is a step in the right direction. And and believe me, there is enough opportunities out there. We have to ask. When I mentor and speak to college students, which I do a lot and love doing it, I would say one of the skills which is being forgotten very fast is the ability to ask. Because again, as human beings, we are shy, right? But do not be afraid to ask. Yes, you ask to 100 people, it's just like sales, right? And do not be afraid of failure. Right? At some point of time, I'd like to share more details about my failure in my first job as a manager. It was a failure because I wasn't ready for it. The person who nominated and promoted me did not see the gaps in my managerial ability versus my operational capability. And of course, that was a major learning, which was 15 years back. And I'm thankful that I had that experience, but also had my mentor who helped me come out of it and look at the gaps and then learn from it. So do not be afraid of failure, learn from it, and then move on.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mr. Krishnan. I'm sure, the insights you've shared have been very relatable to the audience members. One thing I've tried to do while asking you questions is also integrate different questions coming in from the audience, to ensure that they are engaged, that they are an active part of our conversation today, even though we're the only two people visible on the screen today. But to make it action oriented, there is one final poll I would like to leave for the audience, just to see where the pulse of the approach is with regards to this conversation, which is that after today's conversation, what is the one action you are most likely to take in the next 6 to 12 months? I do urge everyone to participate in this. By the way, Louisa, I think you raised your hand. Unfortunately, we do not have audience access for audience right now. So if you could maybe type a question in the question box, we'd be more than happy to address it. Please feel free. Last 20 seconds left for the poll. Please do participate, everyone. No worries, Louisa. It's all fine. Right. So I'm binding up the poll now. Uh, Mr. Krishnan, as you will be able to see, these are the results of the poll. A major chunk seems to be split between enrolling in a formal qualification or leadership program, seeking mentorship or advisory exposure, or strengthening their understanding of digital transformation. Is there something you'd like to comment on this?
It's perfect. This is the way the goal setting starts, right? So I'm glad that most of you have started thinking about what you should be doing next. I would say seeking mentorship or advisory exposure is a step leading into the other two, because as I said, there's so many choices out there that you have to go and seek and talk to people. Yes, take the help of platforms about information already available out there. Self-learning is good, but talk to people, right? Meet people, talk to them, find out what work for them, how they can help you. Because the first one, if I take enrolling in a formal qualification or leadership program, it would start with your own goal setting. So I'm in the process of launching formal mentorship programs through the Transworld Academy, and one of the things which I've done is a career assessment sheet, right? So that could be a starting point for many of you. It's available for free. Anybody who want to reach out through Arjun, and we are entering into a tie-up with MLA College as well, where we get this to many more people, where you at least start with the diagnostics, right? And then, of course, find the right program. As I said, a single program is not the solution. One size does not fits all. So it's very important your goal, your assessment, then look at which program and which can help you to lead into the next step.
Thank you for the comment, Mr. Krishnan. And it's quite nice to know about the upcoming program at Transworld as well. So thank you for sharing about that. Just for the benefit of the audience, I have attached my email address in the comment section as well. So if you do have further questions which you'd like me to route towards Mr. Krishnan, or something you might like to know about educational programs in general, please do not hesitate to reach out. Just for a reference, MLA College does have 3 intakes in a year: January, May, and September. And we do have a upcoming May intake in which we do offer bachelor's and master's programs in both maritime and sustainability domain as well. So if that is something you'd like to connect about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to communicate with you. But Mr. Krishnan, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure your insights have been extremely helpful and informative for the audience, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Arjun, for the opportunity, and I'm sure that I would get connected to maybe 200 of you out there today, and continue this conversation. Thank you very much. All the very
It's
best
been,
to all of you.
it's been a pleasure. And everyone, thank you so much for attending and taking out the time on a weekend. We really appreciate that. So we wish you a lovely weekend ahead, and take care.
Thanks, Arjun. Bye bye.
Happy to help. Take care.